everyone, I'm Katt Whittenberger, retired Navy Senior Chief and the founder and executive director of Mountain Valor Veteran Services. We are a veteran-led nonprofit built for rural Virginia, and we work with veterans, caregivers, spouses, and survivors, especially the folks who have been disconnected from systems for decades. Today I want to talk about something that shows up in every single part of our work, why so many veterans don't ask for help, and what civilian providers can do that actually makes a difference. Before we go any further, if you are a civilian provider listening to this, I'm not here to turn you into a VA expert. I'm here to give you the context that makes veterans make sense. When I left the military at the end of 2021, I truly thought I'd be fine. I had leadership experience, a more than passing familiarity with chaos, and decades of practice in high-stress environments. What I wasn't prepared for was how disorienting civilian life would feel, especially in the mountains. I lived around civilians before, but here's the part I didn't understand until I moved. Civilians near a big military base are usually connected to the military world. They have family who served, they work with the military, they're used to being around it. Moving to rural Virginia was not like that at all. One of the hardest things to explain is that I didn't just lose my job, I lost my context. I didn't know where I fit anymore, not in conversations, not in organizations. I felt like I was always making people uncomfortable. I could see it, that hesitation, the body language that said, I don't know what to do with you. And the military trains us to control our expressions and keep our reactions contained. Civilians often don't have that skill, and they didn't mean harm, but they couldn't hide the uncertainty. It wasn't hostility, it was just this constant reminder that I was an outsider here. So then I started doing this fun thing where I felt like everything I said was wrong. I'd stumble mid-sentence, try to back up and translate, except I was translating into a language I didn't really speak. And I was trying to soften and slow down and add context and adjust my tone, all in real time, while already feeling out of place. That effort is exhausting, and honestly, I was terrible at it. I went from being part of an incredibly tight-knit group, and then suddenly I was incredibly alone. So, like a lot of veterans I know, I isolated. I went more than 6 months without what I would call a normal conversation, not because I didn't want connection, but because navigating misunderstanding and misalignment felt like too much work. After a career built on perfectionism, I didn't know how to work through it. Isolation wasn't intentional, it was protective. What pulled me out of it wasn't this breakthrough moment, it was my son. As a single mom, I had to look at the reality that my relationships, or the absence of them, were shaping his world. By the age of 7, he had already moved around the country 4 times. I had dragged him through enough transition and instability. I realized if I stayed isolated, that isolation wouldn't just affect me. It would become his normal. And that was not okay. Once I started paying attention, I started seeing the pattern everywhere. Veterans isolating not because they don't want help, but because navigating civilian conversations, expectations, and systems feels exhausting. Now let me give you a quick example, including a provider. I recently started seeing a new psychologist at the VA. She's gentle, competent, clearly experienced with civilians. And my immediate thought sitting there was, she has no idea what I'm dealing with, and if I tell her, I will break her. She tried to connect by offering examples of stress responses, and all that went through my head was, oh, how nice it would be if that was all I was dealing with. The issue wasn't her skill. It was the life experience gap. Sometimes the most helpful thing a provider can say is just, I haven't lived what you've lived, but I'm here, and I can handle whatever you bring into this room. Veterans aren't always afraid of the conversation. but we are often afraid that the conversation will overwhelm you. And this is where I want to talk about two things civilian providers often don't realize. First, the military has a long history of sexual trauma, and the numbers don't really make sense until you dig into them. More men are sexually assaulted in raw numbers each year because men make up most of the force. But women are assaulted at dramatically higher rates. In some years, around 8 to 9% of the active component women reported unwanted sexual contact in a single year. For men, it's under 1% per year. Those are annual percentages, not lifetime risk. I'm not sharing that to shock you. I'm sharing it because it's part of the soil this community grows in. Second, for decades, the VA's default answer to claims and care was simply no. No service connection, no documentation, no eligibility, no recognition. Veterans were routinely told that their injuries, trauma, and illnesses weren't related to service, even when they clearly were. Whole categories of harm were denied or minimized for decades at a time. So veterans learned something very specific. The system's first answer is always no. And once you've been told no enough times, you stop asking. Here's the part civilian providers need to understand. That distrust doesn't stay contained inside the VA system. When a system denies your reality for decades, the lesson isn't that agency failed me. The lesson becomes systems don't work for people like me because I don't deserve it. So later, when veterans encounter civilian healthcare, mental health providers, social services, that distrust is already there. Forms feel like traps. Documentation feels like a test you are set up to fail. Disclosure stops feeling worth the risk. From the outside, it can look like resistance. From the inside, it's a rational response to a lifetime of being told no. Now, the benefits paradox. There are a lot of benefits and programs out there. And around here, most people have no idea they exist. When people hear veteran benefits, they think healthcare, disability, probably nothing else. In reality, it is so much broader. Home modifications, transportation, in-home caregiving support, pensions for low-income aging veterans and surviving spouses, other survivor benefits, aerial support, caregiver assistance, and so much more. Most of that information lives online, and a lot of rural households don't. Outreach assumes system fluency. Many veterans were told decades ago they didn't qualify, and they never checked again. And then there's another assumption layered on top of it. Many veterans believe the VA is the only place they are allowed to go for help. So if the VA is slow, confusing, or says no, they don't pivot. They stop. So what can civilian providers actually do? You don't need all the answers. Here are 2 questions that can change a lot. The first, are you currently connected to any veteran or caregiver benefits? And the second, has anyone ever walked you through what you might qualify for, start to finish? If the answer is no, I don't know, or I tried once years ago, that's not resistance, that's information. Normalize it. You know, a lot of people were never told these programs existed, or were told they didn't qualify. That's not your fault. And remember the conditioning you're up against here. In the military, if you go to medical, you risk being seen as the weak link. Not officially, not on paper, but culturally, it's real. So asking for help can feel like failure. Accepting help feels risky. And here are the 3 provider pitfalls, the please do not do this list. 1. Don't assume they know what exists. If they're not asking, it often means they don't know what to ask. 2. Don't default to just call the VA. If they've already been told no or spent hours upon hours stuck in the phone system, that can feel like dismissal. 3. Don't minimize practical stressors. Transportation, caregiving strain, financial pressure, those aren't side issues. They're often the drivers. And one more thing. Many women who served don't identify as veterans. Instead of asking, "Are you a veteran?" ask, "Did you ever serve in the military?" That one question changes disclosure. As we look ahead to 2026, Mountain Valor is intentionally expanding how we work with community providers, especially those serving aging populations, including assisted living, nursing homes, memory care units, and other elder care settings. Because many of the veterans and survivors we support are already in these spaces, even if their military history has never been identified, and our goal isn't to duplicate services or step into clinical roles. It's to strengthen that connective tissue between systems so people stop falling through the gaps. If you're a provider and you want to connect, you can find us at Mountain Valor Veteran Services. And if you're local and interested in participating as a resource at Mountain Valor Fest, reach out. And if you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Veterans aren't avoiding help because they don't want it. They're often avoiding help because asking has been expensive, socially, emotionally, and historically, and they don't trust the system to work. When you understand that, you can stop interpreting guardedness as defiance and start treating it as experience. Thanks for listening, and thank you, genuinely, to every civilian provider doing the work.